Hey guys, welcome to another video. Finally, I know it's been a minute. I took a little break and that's why I'm not actually doing an intro because I know I would ramble on about where I've been. And for those of you guys who are just here for the tips, I know you don't want to hear about that. So if you're new, welcome. If you want to, please subscribe. And if you don't, well, that's hurtful. Anyways, today we're going to talk a little bit about drawing people. We're not going to focus on the shading, the details, the face, anything like that. We don't care about who this girl is, we just care about how she's standing and the proportion of her body. So here is a little human form that I actually learned in an art class I've been taking. If you want to hear more about that class, let me know. But this was the best tip I learned in the whole entire class. Now I know this drawing isn't pretty, but that's not the point. The point is just to learn about the form. So you can see I have 9 lines drawn, each an inch apart, and that is because each person is 8 lengths of their head tall. Now it doesn't have to be an inch, there could be a foot, but the point is that these sections are all equal to the size of the person's head. The reason that this tip was the favorite out of all that I learned in this class is because if I look at a picture of a girl like this, having never drawn people before, I get really intimidated. I might start by drawing her head, but then I'll start outlining her arm, going down the side of her body. I don't know how long to make things. It's just really confusing on knowing where to start. So if you break the human body down into shapes and just build it up like building blocks, then you can go back afterward and add in the exact curves of her body and the details, but you know that you have her position and her proportions correct first. I'm going to go through this chart pretty quickly. If you need to, you can pause, you can copy it down yourself, or I'm sure you could find a chart online. So of course the first section is the entire size of the head, since that's what each section is based on. Then we're going to have the neck, which should be 1/3 of the size. Mine's a little too short, and the shoulders should be a little more spread out. The arms are a little close in on the body, but we're mostly focusing on the vertical proportions. I'm going to go through the rest of it pretty fast, but don't worry, you don't have to remember this exactly. It's just nice to have this to go back and reference. You're just really going to want to kind of remember the shapes we're using for all the body parts, like the circles for the joints, the cylinders for the arms, that kind of thing. So next we have the rib cage. That is 1.5 head heights tall. It starts at the base of the neck. It ends a little bit before that 4th line. And the next section is going to be the pelvis, which is 1 head height tall. About 1/4 of the way up starts the thighs. Now I know on the paper it says almost 1.5, but it's actually almost 2. It's going to go all the way down until 1/3 of the way from that 7th line, and the last third of that section is going to be the knees. Then the next section and a half are going to be the calves, and the last half are the feet. About halfway down the second section is going to be the joints for the shoulders. Then the elbow is going to be at the waist, so in between the ribs and the pelvis. And the wrists are going to be about where the thighs are. Now, you don't need to draw that whole entire graph every time you want to draw a person. A good way to practice this is to print out a reference photo of someone you want to draw and trace those shapes onto the body. Seeing where those shapes are and even adding in joints, you can really see the position the person is standing in and what their posture is. So for example, this girl has slanted hips here, and if I forgot to draw that, then in proportion one of her legs would actually be longer because it would be stretched. Instead, the hip is tilted down, which is why that leg can extend farther. Once you have all these shapes drawn on your reference photo, then you can take your sketchbook and redraw these shapes. It's so much less intimidating than trying to take a blank piece of paper and immediately draw a perfect arm, leg, collarbone, all of that. All you have to do is redraw circles, triangles, ovals, and then you have a perfectly proportioned structure for the person you're going to draw. This photo is one of several reference photos that my teacher gave us in class. and he actually had us do an exercise where we trace the shapes onto the person, just like I am here. Then we actually had to turn the paper over and redraw that person without looking. Now, mine may not have turned out perfectly, but considering that I didn't even look at the reference photo and I have never drawn a person before, I'm pretty proud of myself. The only thing, the legs are a little bit too far to the right and a little bit too large, but like I said, I wasn't even looking at a reference photo and I successfully drew a person. So the next exercises, we got to look at the paper, and you don't have to do the non-looking if you don't want to, but it really raised my confidence just to see that I was capable of drawing a person. Another reference photo we got in class was of this man here, and I did this sketch using that same shape technique as we used on the ballerina. Then I drew the clothes over that and I erased the shapes underneath. If you saw this sketch, you might think that these lines were the first lines I put down, but if I just went in immediately and I tried to draw his back and his butt to his leg, it would be really out of proportion. I know that I wouldn't have been able to get the distance of the legs correct, or the length of his torso would be off. I really wouldn't have been able to do it without having those building blocks of the structure shapes underneath. After practicing with reference photos for a while, I was actually able to make this sketch not using any reference photos. So I'm extremely proud of that. I started this class off having never drawn a person, not even from a photo, to ending it being able to draw a person doing the gesture that I wanted them to without any references and getting the proportion correct. So I was extremely proud of that, and that is the reason I wanted to make this video, to share this tip with you. If you've been too intimidated to ever try drawing people, I promise you anyone can do it if they just use this technique. I know the sketch isn't perfect, I'm sure the proportions are a little bit off, but I'm miles ahead of where I was before I learned this technique, so I just really wanted to share it with you guys. As I wrap up this video, I'm just going to show you a couple photos that my teacher gave us to use as tools when we're learning the human form. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. As far as tips and tricks goes, this was one of my favorite techniques I've ever learned while I'm teaching myself to draw. I will never look at drawing the human form the same. It's not quite as intimidating anymore, and now I'm actually excited to learn more about how to draw people. So I might make some more videos on that. Let me know if you want to see that. And as always, say hi in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe.